Hello everyone. In this video, you're going to learn the very basics of PHP. But before we dive into the code, let's start with the why. Why would you do this in the first place? Why would you want to learn PHP? Well, in this video series that we're working through on this channel, we've been building a plugin or a new block type in WordPress, and it's responsible for this area. Now, in our previous lesson, we learned how to include like static HTML that we manually typed in, and that's what you're seeing here. But what if instead I wanted to pull in my custom pet post type? And what if I wanted to pull in like dogs that are over the weight of 10 pounds? That's a really specific query that the built-in query loop block type cannot perform, right? It cannot filter based on the value of a custom field. This is where coding in PHP comes to save the day. So in this video, we're going to learn how to perform a completely custom query like that. Like, hey, only give me the cats that weigh less than 5 pounds, or only give me the dogs that weigh more than 10 pounds. And we're going to learn how to output that back into this custom block type plugin that we're building together. Cool. Now, I'm not going to walk through how to create this plugin. We've already done that 2 videos ago on this channel. I'll include a link to that video. It's part of my playlist, so hopefully you can find that. It's a really quick video that shows you how to spin up a local dev environment, how to get a professional text editor, how to create all the boilerplate for your first plugin. But again, we're not going to cover that in this video. I will refresh your memory, though, on how to open that folder up in your text editor. So from local WP, the software that we use to spin up a local dev environment, remember, you're just going to use this site folder link right here. When you click on that, you're going to then dig into the app folder, and then the public folder, and then the WP content folder, then the plugins folder. And here is the plugin that we were working on. So now you would just open this up in VS Code. If you're on Mac, you can just drag this onto the dock icon. For VS Code, on Windows, you can use the top left File Open Directory. Or on Windows, if you have a VS Code window, you can just drag this on top of that open window. Cool, but you'll know that you opened up the correct directory with VS Code if you have this File Explorer menu here, and you should have folders like Build, Node Modules, SRC. Cool. So again, 2 videos ago on this channel, we learned in detail how to get all of this set up. From this point forward in this video, we're going to learn about PHP. So in the SRC folder, and actually before we dig into any code, I want to refresh your memory that you need to have a command running in your terminal for any of your saved changes to take place. Otherwise, you'll be really frustrated. You'll be saving changes throughout this whole video, and none of them will be taking effect on your website. So in the terminal, remember, you can always get to the terminal in VS Code by pressing Control-J on Windows or Command-J on Mac. That toggles it open and closed. And just be sure to say npm start. Go ahead and press enter. That's going to run forever in the background. It's going to watch for any saved changes we make to our files and bundle them up and make them available on your site. What we want to do right now is dig into this SRC folder and then jump into render.php. This is where we are going to learn about the PHP language for the first time. This is going to be a lot of fun. Why don't we give ourselves a clean slate and just delete everything in this file? So again, you can press Control-A on Windows or Command-A on Mac to select everything and just backspace delete. So we're completely empty, completely clean slate. Now, you could start by just saying hello world. And do this with me. If you just say 2 plus 2 and hit save and then refresh on your front end, we see 2 plus 2. What if you wanted the computer to actually add up 2 plus 2? Like we would expect to see the number 4 here. This gets into why there are different languages. So HTML, currently we've just been used to writing HTML, right? Like P for paragraph or H1 for a heading or, like an unordered list. HTML is markup. Markup just means we're describing or giving semantic value or meaning to pieces of content. If you actually want to start programming, well, that's where PHP comes into play. PHP is a general purpose programming language, so it actually can figure out what 2 plus 2 equals. HTML cannot. So by default, in this file, we are in HTML mode, right? As we start typing, we're in the world of HTML. If we want to go into the world of PHP, we just say less than, question mark, PHP, and that's it. Now I can drop down, and I'm not in the world of HTML. I'm now in the dynamic, powerful programming world of PHP. So now I can say echo. Echo is how you output something. Don't get too worried about the word echo for now. It'll become second nature over time. But let's say echo 2 plus 2. and then just exit PHP mode. So on the next line, you could say like question mark greater than. So this is how you enter PHP mode. This is how you get out of PHP mode. And now down here, we're back in HTML, which is nice and familiar, right? So you could have like a heading level 2 and say hello. You could have a paragraph and type lorem, hit tab for some filler content. So you can save this file and refresh. And now you see that PHP mode can output dynamic things. It can program, it can do anything in the world. HTML is just for describing content. Let's take it one step further. Aside from just 2 plus 2, like let's try to store your name in a variable. So you can say $ and then just say like name equals, and then say quotes and say, you don't have to type in Brad, type in your actual name. And then we do want to end each line or statement with a semicolon. We didn't have a semicolon here because that was the end of this entire block of PHP code, so we didn't run into any problems. But 9 times out of 10 or 99 times out of 100, you're going to want to end a line of PHP code with a semicolon. Cool. Now let's try outputting that. You can get rid of echo 2 plus 2. Like imagine down in your code, what if you wanted this heading to say hello, comma, and then your name? Well, you can just go into PHP, so that's this symbol, and then you could say echo $name, and then just close out of PHP mode, so question mark greater than. Now you could include a semicolon here, right? This is the end of a PHP statement, but because we're exiting PHP right here, it doesn't matter either way, you'd be fine. But the idea is when you have multiple lines or statements of PHP, you do want to end that line with a semicolon. So just to get in the good practice or build a good habit, you could include that here. But if we save this and refresh, we see hello, Brad. And now this code is dynamic. So if you change your variable name to barks a lot, hit save, hit refresh, you get the idea, right? So I think you're starting to see now how you can enter and exit PHP mode. Then you're back into standard, familiar, non-intimidating HTML mode. But then you can start to intersperse dynamic values. And now this example doesn't look very impressive because we just spelled out what this value is 2 lines above it. But imagine if instead this was pulling from the WordPress database. Like imagine if the dynamic values we were interspersing was like our blog posts or our pets or our pages, right? And then someone who's not a programmer can go in and make an edit or a change to one of these posts, and our custom code is pulling in those easily updatable values. So let's do this. Because this name example is not very fun since we're the ones spelling it out, let's learn how to pull in dynamic value from the WordPress database. So up here where we're inside PHP mode, you can get rid of name equals. And instead, you could say $, and let's imagine like we only wanted to pull in like the dogs that weigh 9 pounds or more, right? Or the cats that are below 8 pounds or something like that. So let's create a variable. Remember, it's just $, and then you could name it anything. Let's call it big dogs and pull in only the pet post type that is of dog, only where the custom field of weight is 10 or greater, so on and so forth. So we would say $big dogs equals, and then we're going to create a new instance of the WP query class. Now, what in the world is a class? What does this mean? It means that we didn't write this code. The core of the WordPress software itself, it has something, let's think of it as a tool called WP Query, and we don't have to write that code, but we can leverage it and make use of it. This is where we can say, hey, give me only the pets that are below a certain weight or of a certain category, and we can say like how many, give us 3, give us 10, give us all of them. So we're basically just saying create a new instance of this tool. Right, and then it's going to give us results, and that will live in big dogs, and then we can use big dogs down here in our HTML code and like output them onto the page. However, I don't want to spell this out line by line. Instead, now that you and I know that there's this tool called WP Query, let's go to ChatGPT, and you don't even need to write in the exact same prompt as me. I think this would actually be a fun challenge if you paused this YouTube video, and now that you know that there's something called WP_query like this, and by the way, you get the underscore by holding Shift and the minus key. It's to the right of the 0 or closing parentheses key. But now that you know that this exists, that's really all you needed from me. Now you can just ask ChatGPT. So I challenge you, pause the video and try to come up with your own prompt, but if you want to resume the video, here's what I would say. In WordPress, I'm trying to write PHP that uses WP Query to give me only posts where the post type is pet and where the taxonomy, I can't spell today, taxonomy of species is dog, and where the custom field of weight is greater than 9. Right? So you probably could have came up with this on your own. This has nothing to do with programming. Now the code that this is going to give us is going to look very confusing. It might be intimidating, but that's okay. You and I can go over it together in this video. But let's see what that gives us. Oops, voice crack of the century. Let's see what that gives us. It's going to give you a snippet of code. You can use this top right button here to copy the code into your clipboard, and then back in VS Code, we can actually just completely erase everything that we had in this file. So just Control A or Command A to delete, and then hit the backspace, delete it all. Paste in your clipboard, so Control or Command V. Let's see what that gives us. Before we even analyze this code, I'm going to try just saving it and refreshing my front end. Cool, there we see bear, woof, and barks a lot. But let me go edit one of those dogs so that their weight is a value that should not appear, like they should not be working here. I'll edit bear, right? Yeah, because bear was appearing. Let me edit bear and put that weight down to like 5 and hit save. And now if I refresh over here, yep, bear is gone. And now we only have woof and barks a lot. So that code is working perfectly. Now let's just learn how to fine tune it or make sense of it. Okay, so this first big block of code is saying args equals an array. I'll explain what this means in just a minute, but I'm just sort of looking at the bird's eye view of code with you. Then it's using that here, and then down here is where the actual output is. Before we even make sense of everything that's going on here, you can try to experiment. Like, what if you only wanted cats? For me, you can see, you can read through the code a little bit, even if you've never programmed before. We can see where dog is spelled out right here. You can just change that to cat, hit save, refresh. Now you're only getting the cats that are of a certain weight. And then down here, we're filtering based on weight, where the value of 9, and we're saying the comparison is greater than. So I think you get the idea. Like, you could change that to be less than. So show us only cats where the weight is less than 9. You only get purrs loud now. Cool, let me Control Z. So you can undo with Command Z or Control Z. And I'm just going to go back to the original query. Oops, I want to redo that actually. Okay, cool. So let's start to make sense of this code that ChatGPT just gave to me. So this first line where it says $args, this doesn't need to be $args. That's just a variable name. So you could instead call it like $our arguments, or you could call it pizza or unicorn. The idea is that then just a little bit down below, it's used on this line where it's saying create a new instance of the WP query class. So instead of $args there, I just changed it to our arguments. And then on this line where it's saying whatever this results in, well, maybe you don't want to call it $query. Maybe we want to call this $big dogs. And then that's what you would use down in this code below. So instead of $query here, this would be a big dogs. And I'm actually going to undo that back to query. I want to show you a really cool tip in VS Code. So notice how that's here, here, and here. Maybe I don't want to replace all 3 of those. If I just select the first instance of what I'm trying to replace, and then on Windows, press Control D. On Mac, it's Command D. That selects the next instance. You can press it again. That selects the next instance. And now my cursor is in all of those spots at once. So like you can use the arrow keys on your keyboard, or you don't need to use the arrow keys on your keyboard, but you can just start typing. So like let's change that to $big dogs, and then hit escape on your keyboard. You're out of that mode. You might have to hit escape one more time, but you just changed it in 3 locations, or even if you had 20 locations, you get the idea. Cool, so WP query is going to give us only the post that we're looking for, based on what we spelled out up here. And then down here, we're looping through that. So what in the world is while? A while loop just says continue to do this as long as this is still true. So while there are still dogs that we haven't looped through yet, just keep looping again and again and again. This line of code is going to get the current information for that particular pet ready, and then you can output it. Why don't we change this a little bit? So this line where it says output your post data, I don't want the content, I just want to show their name and maybe a link to their detail page. So I would get rid of the content, and then the title is fine, but I want to show you how you can be in more fine-grained control of the HTML that this is going to output. So I would actually delete this line where it says the title, and you can get rid of this comment that says output your post data. So just as soon as you see this line ending where it says big dogs the post, I'm going to drop out of PHP. So at the end of that line, I'm adding question mark greater than. And then see right before this closing curly bracket here, right before that, I'm going to go back into PHP mode. So less than question mark PHP. And what that means is that now right here where my cursor is, we're back in good old familiar, comfortable HTML mode. So now you could have like a div, right? And then inside the div, you could have like a heading level 2 and you could give it a class. But let's just say like you wanted the title right here. So for a dynamic value, you could go into PHP and then drop out. While you're in PHP mode, you can just say the title. So we didn't have to use echo from earlier. WordPress has a function specifically named the title that will handle echoing for us. But the idea is that now you could control this, like the CSS styling of your elements. Like we could give the div a class of our pet. And then you could give like the heading level 2 a class if you wanted. But if I save that and refresh, notice now we just see their titles. But now let's go try to style things. So we have something called our pet. Now you could just go into style.scss. And down at the bottom, you could create a rule. So .our-pet, curly brackets. And you could say like what? Border 1 pixel solid gray. Hit save, refresh. I think you're starting to see the idea here. So now you are in 100% control of the HTML, the CSS, and thanks to PHP and WP Query, you're in complete control of the data that you're working with. Really quick though, let's make these links so that you can click on them to view their detail screen. So back in render.php, in HTML, we've talked about P for paragraph, H1 or H2 for headings, div. The A element is how you create a link. Let's start this line of code all over again, just so it's a bit easier to spell out. So H2 for a heading. Inside of that, we want a link. So you can hit A and then hit tab. Okay, cool. So href is the value that you're going to be taken to. So this is, if you want to link to Google, it would be https://google.com. Inside the A sandwich, this is the text that you click on. So like, let's for now just put the letter X as a placeholder, but in these quotes, this is where you would want the URL for the specific animal in question for their detail screen. So in those quotes, you would drop into PHP. In PHP mode, just say the_permalink, parentheses to call that. And then if you save that, there's going to be 2 X's. And now you'd want to pull in their real name here. So instead of the placeholder X, you just go into PHP, exit out of PHP, and just call the_title. So you can save that, refresh. I can click on woof, and it takes me to the detail screen. I can click on barks a lot, takes me to the detail screen. We're in business. Now, we're not going to win any design awards for this, but in our very next video on this channel and in this series, let's practice our HTML and CSS to create something here that's actually elegant and beautiful. We can also pull in like the featured image for each animal and create like a really nice looking card that you can click on and maybe animate it when you hover over it. I mean, the sky is the limit. We'll practice our styling in the very next video. But as for this video, that's really it. You might not have learned the technical aspects of PHP, but you have, I was going to say a lifetime. You might not want to work with PHP for the rest of your life, but you have all the time in the world. In this video, I just wanted you to see how easy it is to get access to the real true power of WordPress, right? You're one ChatGPT query away from doing anything that you could imagine. Now, over time, you'll start to build out your PHP vocabulary. I mean, we already said that like this is how you enter PHP mode. This is a variable. This is an array. This is an associative array. This is the symbol for how you say that like, oops, I had a typo there. That was an earlier part of the video that I edited out. I was trying to explain that these names, we did not make these up. So we did make up this variable name, our arguments. These values have to be exactly spelled the way they are because these are WordPress values. You and I didn't make these up. If you got this misspelled by even one letter, WordPress will not know what you're trying to say. But this is essentially the label. This symbol is how you say that this should equal this value. And that's really it. Then you're feeding that array into the WP query class. Don't worry about what is a class, what is an array too far. You have all the time in the world to study PHP, but you only need to do that if you want to. That's kind of the whole idea here. Maybe you don't want to become a guru at PHP. Maybe you want to become a guru at CSS or JavaScript or React or any other topic. The idea is that just what we learned in this quick video, you now know enough PHP to be dangerous. So where do we go next from here? Well, like I said, in our next video, we're going to work on the styling and get this looking actually beautiful and learn a lot about CSS along the way. Then in the videos after that, we're going to learn about JavaScript, React, how to work with a REST API, so on and so forth. Just a lot of skills that make you valuable as a web developer, but that also allow you to build really dynamic, powerful WordPress solutions. That is going to bring this video to a close. If you're enjoying this series and you want to help support this YouTube channel, the best way is to visit my website. It's learnwebcode.com. This has links to different projects and pages that I have. So I have a Patreon, which offers several perks. You'll get your name in the closing credits of these videos. You'll get the downloadable source code files when we start actually programming together. You can also vote on upcoming tutorials. I have a similar membership tier here on YouTube. I also have many different courses that are available on both Udemy and Teachable. For the last 19 years, I've used DreamHost to host my websites. If you're looking for hosting and you use my affiliate link here, that will benefit my channel. I will receive compensation for sending new users their way. You can also join my newsletter. You can follow me on social media. That's about it. Thank you so much for watching this entire video. I hope you feel like you learned something, and stay tuned for the next video where we're going to flex and practice our CSS. Take care, and I'll see you soon. This video was made possible by my supporters on Patreon and YouTube memberships. I don't have any producers yet, but your name could go here. But I want to give a huge shout out and thank you to Rodney, David, Linas, and Demetris for being sponsor tier members over on Patreon. I really appreciate the support. Take care, everyone, and I'll see you in the next video.